Hi, this is Justin McDaniel, and I'm at the City Light Substation in Seattle. This is Bob Moore, an electrician, and I got a couple questions to ask you. First question is, what does the substation do?
Well, this substation takes power that's generated mainly from this gadget, high voltage, 120,000 volts, and we take it in at 120,000, transform it down to 26,000, and send it out to the public.
Good, okay. The next one is, where does your power come from?
Most of our power comes from this gadget, but we have ties with Bonneville, we have ties with Puget Power, with Tacoma City and Light, several places.
What is the voltage and current coming in from the power plant?
Well, the current varies, but the voltage coming in here is 120,000 volts.
Okay, let's see, what's the next one? How many wires come in from the power plant?
That isn't a set amount. At this station, we don't receive our power directly from this gadget. First we go to another substation, a Bothell substation, which is a receiving substation out by Mill Creek, and it transforms 240,000 volts down to 120,000, and I think we get 2 lines from Bothell, and I think we have a Snohomish intertie too.
Okay, what is the voltage that goes out to the city from this substation?
From this substation, it's 26,000 volts. You have others, what they call unit substations, that'll transform it down to 4,000, but they're being phased out.
Are there circuit breakers that disconnect the power if lighting hits a power pole?
Yes, almost all around you. You'll see some circuit breakers. These are circuit breakers for 120,000 volts. In back of these transformers, these large contraptions, you'll see some smaller 3-tanked objects. They're breakers for 26,000 volts.
How much power can a transformer handle before it gets too hot?
Well, that varies also. A transformer has a rating of how much power it can handle, and it will vary depending on which cooling devices are in effect. Like this transformer here, it'll handle a certain amount of power without the fans going. With the fans going, it'll cool it down a little bit more, and it can handle more power. Other transformers in other places have, they can be water cooled, they can be what they call forced oil cooled. There's several devices for making them handle more power.
Okay. How do the transformers keep from overheating?
Well, just like I said, there's several devices that help cool the transformers.
What happens if the transformer gets too hot?
If the transformer gets too hot, to save the equipment, we actually de-energize it.
Who makes this equipment?
Oh, there's several companies. In back of you, you have a GE transformer. Over here, you have Siemens Alice breakers. If you go over there, you'd have Kelman breakers, ITE breakers. Oh, there's several companies.
How much does it cost?
A whole bunch. From a few $1,000,000 for a transformer like what's in back of you to, maybe several $100,000 for a breaker like this.
How long does it take to get this equipment from the manufacturer?
Oh, there's what they call a lead time. And again, that varies with the equipment. Where something that's relatively common, like these breakers, this is just a guess on my part. I don't order the equipment, but I would guess a few months. A transformer like that, maybe 2 or 3 years.
How long does it take to install it?
Again, it varies with the equipment, from a few hours to months.
What are some of the problems with installing new equipment?
Well, that depends a lot on where you're installing it. Some of the biggest problem with installing new equipment is getting the old equipment out, getting rid of wires and things that went to the old equipment. So the biggest problem is the old equipment.
What happens if one of these breakers or something breaks down? Do the other ones act like a backup to it?
Yes, that's exactly what happens. If something happens in this station, let's say something up there would break, you get a short to ground. That breaker would open, and that breaker would open, and the breakers over there that are connected to it would open to isolate this piece of equipment. Now, if something else would fail, let's say that breaker for some reason wouldn't open, it would just go one step beyond, and the breaker beyond it would open. It just isolates the trouble. Okay, this is a Siemens Alice 120,000 kV breaker. It acts just like a circuit breaker in the panel at your house. Any problems come up, or for normal switching to isolate so we can work on other equipment, they open it from a control room, and the control room is over there. You can see it behind the vehicles. It's that block house. Okay, if you'd pan around to the yard between the transformers here, you'll see some 3 tanked objects. Now they're 26 kV breakers, or 26,000 volt breakers. And they do the same thing with the lower voltage. This is a transformer. Now, we bring 120,000 volts into the yard. This critter, it takes 126,000 volts and transforms it down to 26,000 volts and sends it out to the public.
Okay, I am Paul Donor. I am the senior operator here at City Light. Basically, my job is to take care of the controls here in the control room and do switching out in the yard, and also to do a lot of inspecting, make sure things are working right, and also to keep records. And I was asked about how we know when something goes wrong out in the yard or here in the station. We have an annunciator right here, and it has a drop for every major problem that is out in the yard, so it will come down and it will tell us that case that's battery charger trouble. That's a problem with fans on the middle transformer bank 72 out there. So that's how we determine what the status of the yard is if there's a problem. And this is wired into our power control center so that they also get an alarm when we get one here. So if there's nobody in the station, they can send one of us up here to find out what it's all about and what the problem is.
I was looking up here. What does the non-urgent alarm? I mean.
Okay, well, a non-urgent alarm is an alarm like low gas pressure on one of the transformer banks, or some other function within the station here that are not really important. The urgent alarm that you see is if a feeder, which is one of the lines going out into the area here, trips out for some reason, or some other major problem within the station, that becomes an urgent alarm.
Okay, now we all see every day somebody working on the power lines. Do they have to call down here and tell you to cut off the electricity for that one line?
Normally, no. They call our power control center, who sets up the working conditions for them. A lot of the work they do is hot line work. If you notice when they're working, they have long poles that they use that are insulated, and those lines are still alive. Now on major work, they do have to kill the line, and then sometimes we do it from here or from there. Sometimes we You know, I think that was me. Oh, nope. To give you a brief description of the station, this is a transformation and distribution station whereby we have the big power lines that you saw outside here on the west side coming in 120,000 volts. And these symbols here depict the transformer itself sitting out in the yard. Over there is a 26,000 volt system. Go ahead and pick that up. The 26,000 volt system that goes out into the field, which is where you get your power at your house. That's then transformed down to the voltage you use in your house. And the black lines you see there depicts 26,000, what we have out on the yard here, and this blue that you saw depicts the 120,000 volt. And we also very closely monitor our voltage so that you people have the right voltage. And this is our expanded scale voltmeter that tells us what the voltage is, and we can switch that back and forth to various buses, various parts of the station to see what the actual voltage is.
What is it? Just kind of generates power around.
No, that tells us what the voltage is. That is a voltmeter.
Oh.
That's just a meter. That's just an instrument that tells us what's out there.
Oh, okay.
And these other meters you see here are by and large amp meters. This particular situation has 3 amp meters. It is on one of the incoming 120,000 volt lines. That tells us how much load is on that line, how much is coming into the station on that.
I have a question. What
Yes,
would
sir.
happen if like a house got too much volts?
Well, it does. I hope that wasn't me. It does damage to the things in the house usually if it goes up very far, and that's very, very rare that happens. Once in a while, something will happen on a line, or something occurs that causes that. But that's very, very, very rare that ever happens. Outside of lightning, lightning will sometimes cause that.
Does lightning ever affect this area?
Oh yes, oh yes. We have had, especially a little bit further south of us here. I think this last lightning storm we had, we lost something like 37 transformers up on the poles.
But that took a while as a kid.
Yeah, it takes a little while to put things back together again. Not much we can do about it. Okay, something else that might be of interest is our relaying equipment. And that is our line protection and the station protection equipment. If something happens out here, a tree branch falls in, or like happened a few years ago, a cat got up in the bus work out here and fried itself. We have to have some means of taking the section of the station or the line off the system. And that's what this equipment ultimately does. It receives information from instrument transformers out in the yard, and then this actually trips our circuit breakers. And that is some of the relaying on the 120,000 volt side of the station. We have reclosing relays here, which is one of the things I have to put back here pretty soon. If a tree branch or something occurs that slaps wires together, the probability is it will clear, so this will try twice to close that circuit breaker again and turn the lights back on. If there's something still there, then it does what we call lockout, and it won't try and close again. I have to come back and do it myself. I have to put it back in manually.
Is there anything, would one of these maybe malfunction and
It does happen occasionally. We have relay people that test these things, I think it's once a year, to make sure they're working right, but things still do occasionally go wrong. It has happened. It's not very often. We have a real good record on these, but then, like everything else mechanical and made by man, it does get tired once in a while. And around the back side here, lead us around the back side of the board here, we have another whole, might as well scan the board there. Yeah, have another whole board here of relay. This is on our 26,000 volt side of the station, and this is what protects the feeders that go out into the community. That gives you an idea of some of what's involved in one of these stations and making it working and making it safe, protecting us as well as the community.
So it just pretty much protects the community from...
Well, it protects the system.
Is your job really hard to do?
Physically, no. I don't have a lot of physical work to do in my particular end of it, but I do have to have a lot of knowledge of this equipment, how and why it works, and where to tell people to look for trouble. Because I or somebody like me is usually the one that calls when there is trouble, and we kind of need to tell them what to look for.
For any reason, would you have to maybe shut down the station for, I don't know, for a checkup or anything?
Normally, we don't take a whole station out.
Just like
It would be for a major rebuild work or something like that. We did it over at our canal substation here several years ago. We took a whole station out. And that was quite difficult because we had to put a lot of load on other stations and figure out what to do with the load that was normally on that station.
So pretty much you just kind of
So we
station and
might take one section. This station is kind of divided up in three sections on the 26,000 volt side. We have bus A, bus B, and bus C. And we can take one bus out at a time for maintenance or for work, and that isn't so difficult.
So if they're like remodeling this place, they'd use another area to generate
We'd have to,
electricity, right?
we'd have to supply from 2 or 3 other substations, and probably do it in the summertime, because I doubt if we have anything that would really carry the load under the heavy load in the wintertime because of the electric heat load we have here.
Yeah, so is that like a lot more work during the winter time?
It just couldn't be done. We wouldn't be able to carry the load. It just wouldn't work. We'd have wires melting down because we just don't have enough to carry it. Anything else that we can help you with?
Do these numbers have any special?
They certainly do. Those numbers are the feeder numbers. And our dispatchers, in fact, we have them here on the station, we have what we call feeder maps to show where in the community each one of these goes.
Oh, so you do have a map just in case?
We have what we call quarter section maps and also feeder maps that show each one of these feeders, and also the quarter section shows basically every wire of the high voltage wires, not the low voltage, but the high voltage wires. It shows every wire in that whole quarter section.
Is that the map on your desk?
No, that map on our desk is actually a drawing, what we call a print, and that's a print off the station.
You know when people get their power hooked up now, do they like relay a message here to just use up more power? Or?
The power that goes through this station, if you want to walk back around around the front here again, here's Donner. Oops. Yes, sir, you're ringing. I'm at Shoreline. I bet you got 2706 to go back. Okay. Okay, restore closure on 2706. Remove Menard's tag. Okay, stand by a moment. Okay, we'll call that 1539 hours. I removed Menard's tag and restored closure on feeder 2706. That's correct, Ken. You bet you know. You bet you. Bye. That's one of my little chores.
What was that you just did?
We restored a reclosure. This reclosing relay to operation. There were people out here working on that line, and if something had happened, we don't want that line reclosing into their trouble.
So
Many, many years ago, I'll tell you the story. If you want to take this out of your film, you may. If you don't, you can keep it. Many years ago, there was a man up on a pole. And in those days, on our 4400 volt system, they used some little oil pot type switches. And they had been doing some reconductoring and rework of the way the lines went, and they got the wires crossed. And he went to close in on that, and that pot blew up and set him on fire. And the thing reclosed on him 3 times. They figured they'd have saved his life if that hadn't reclosed. And that's why the state law became the state law that any lineman working on a line that thinks there's a danger can call in, and we have to take the reclosure off for him. And that's to protect his life.
on the lines, we see driving by, and we see there's one on the bottom, one on the top. Does there like go back and forth or something? Like one goes, like one.
Okay, now you're gonna have to help me a little bit because there's a whole lot of things up on these poles. So you're gonna have to help me a little bit more as to what you're talking about.
Just when you're driving by on the freeway or something, you see the power lines.
Okay, the big lines that you see from the freeway usually are like the 120,000 in the south end, and further up north here we have 240,000 volt lines. In the BPA system, they have some 500,000 volt lines. Also, there is some 345 in use, and there's also, interestingly enough, for those of you that are interested in this, a direct current line that goes from southeastern Oregon down into California, and that operates at 1 million volts. And that's interesting because if you ever drive down through that area, you'll only find 2 wires instead of 3 up there. That's DC, so that doesn't run 3-phase, that's just 2 wires. In fact, I was on a bus one time that went under that, and the bus driver was having some fun with it, and I went up afterwards and told him really what he'd gone under. And I guess he did some more research, said he was going to make use of it the next time he took passengers under there, because it's one of the few DC lines we have in the United States down there. And that was supposed to have been a double line, and the system just after it was built, there was an earthquake down there, and it destroyed one of the stations, actually both the stations, I guess, in California. So they took what was left and made one station out of the 2, and that's what we now have in service. And we actually ship power over that when we sell to Southern California, which we do occasionally in the wintertime, in the spring when we have a lot of water. We do sell some power down that way. And we actually send it over that DC line. But anyhow, you'll find most of these big lines are 3-conductor, and in answer to your question, if we have a lateral, we call it, out in your neighborhood, we might have one line up on top on an insulator. That's your 15,000 volt high voltage line. And down about 4 foot down on the pole, you'll have another line that's either clamped to the pole or on a very small insulator, and that's what we call the neutral wire. That's the return. And then down below that, we'll either have the secondaries, or you might have telephone, you might have TV, you might have something else hung up there these days. Optic fiber, there's all kinds of things they're putting up on our poles nowadays.
I guess this is the last question. I'm looking over here at these graphs. What do they tell you? I mean,
Well, these are voltmeter charts. This actually gives us a record of the voltage that was on bus A, which is the voltage is the bus out here to the north. That's actually a graphical record of the voltage. That's a 24-hour chart.
so that's
It runs actually 7 days. That's the voltage level. Bear this in mind. Using hydraulics, voltage is pressure. Current is gallons per minute. We're monitoring voltage, we're monitoring pressure. The electrical pressure is what we're monitoring here, along with the expanded scale voltmeter we talked about a little bit ago.
What is this?
This is our station total. This is why we came back around here. This shows the actual amount of power, which is voltage times amps times another little factor, that is going through our station right now. And right now there is about 48 million watts going through this station right now.
Wow.
That's 48 million watts, what we call 48 megawatts, if you're familiar with the metric.
When you're out here, I don't know, switching boxes out here, do you have to have special gloves or anything?
For my work, no. Ordinarily, no. All of our switch channels are grounded. They're down at ground level.
What are these things right here?
Those are just a strip chart. This particular instrument you're looking at here was with a year-day clock, and the time on it is what we call an oscillograph. And if there is a problem on the system that causes a voltage or a heavy current fluctuation, or one of these feeder lines relays out, this will take a picture of the happening. This will monitor the voltage and or the current, and inside here, in fact, I'll open it real briefly. Inside here there's some photographic paper that actually takes a print of what happened. And then our engineers take that and analyze it, along with maybe one from 2 or 3 other stations, to try and get a picture of what really happened in the system.
So that's pretty much just their kind of directions or something there.
It's information on the fault, yes, on what occurred. And it might also interest you, our system is tied from way up north in Canada all the way to the Mexican border, and at least to the Continental Divide, which is up in Montana in this part of the country. It's all one great big system.
So this is, all
or do all these other stations kind of help?
We're all tied together. We all help each other.
I noticed when you got that call, you took out something like this off.
I took a tag off.
What was that?
That tag has a man's name on it, and he's the man that was working on the line, or the foreman or the crew that was working on the line that we had the closure off for.
That's about it.
Okay.